Hi everyone, Sat here. So in this tutorial, we're going to be looking at scaling with AR Foundation. It's a big part of AR Foundation. It's been built kind of from the ground up with scaling in mind. You might be wondering, why do we even care about AR Foundation scaling, and what is this big deal about why there are two types of scaling? The normal way we scale things is by changing the transform scale, and that seems to work for a lot of things. And it does, but a lot of the times that can cause huge problems. So one of the ways that cause problems is if you're taking a game object and it has, let's just say it's a car, for example, and that car has a physics body, or maybe multiple physics bodies inside of it. And then when something, and you know, if it hits like a wall, it reacts, it falls based off of its mass and its size, and all of this physics works perfectly in a normal game. And then you take this car and it's got all its physics bodies on it, and you place it inside your AR world, it's going to be huge, right? We know there's a huge scaling issue with AR Foundation and augmented reality in general and the regular Unity scale. So if you shrunk that based off of its transform, all the physics would go crazy, would go haywire. Well, not really haywire, but it just wouldn't work because the mass would change, the size would change, and then the game wouldn't feel the same, right? So that's a lot. Now you could change those mass values and everything for each individual object in your entire game, but it's really time consuming. And there's other things like particle effects. You can't really scale them using the regular transform. So AR Foundation has another way of doing it, which isn't really changing this individual scale of game objects. It's by changing the AR session origin that those game objects are attached to. So there's a document online that goes through this. Well, it's a blog post. A lot of people have been contributing to it, and they're talking about some of the issues that they've had and some of the solutions that they've come up to. So it's a really good, useful document, and I'd strongly recommend you take a look at it. And we're going to basically try and recreate something that looks a bit like this, just scaling a cube. It won't be just a cube, it'll be the whole AR session origin, and having something else in the scene that does not change with the scale. So we're going to try and recreate that, and we're going to go through a few noticeable changes that we have to add to our original script that we did in our previous one. Now, full disclosure here, I'm new to scaling with AR Foundation. This is a different thing for me. I haven't really done it with this. I've done it with AR Core and AR Kit, but not with AR Foundation. So this is different, and I've noticed quite a few issues that I thought, hang on a second, this isn't right. Now, I'm not going to go into those issues in this video. In this video, I'm just going to show you what I believe is the correct way of doing it, and what I believe is how it should be, and what they, I guess, that the ideal response and the way they want you to use it. In the next video, I'll also show you some of the problems I've had with this and the limitations to it, possibly. But again, like I said, I'm new to this. So in that next video, I would love for you guys to try that out, try what I do, and also see if you get those issues too. But for now, this is going to be how AR Foundation scaling works based off of this blog post. So this video is brought to you because of one of the messages that I received on the course, and I appreciate you, Dilnur, for leaving. I hope I pronounced your name right, but I appreciate you for kind of asking me to take a look at this and scaling in AR. And because of everyone who's purchased the course, especially to you guys who rated it 5 stars and helped kind of bring more people to the course because of that, I can do these free YouTube videos and kind of hopefully provide more free content. My way of saying thank you to everyone who has purchased the course is by having the source code and the project files of this tutorial on that course as well. And anyone can purchase that course off of Udemy. There'll be a link below. And if you can't purchase it, that's okay. You can just follow along. I don't hide anything in this tutorial. You can just see all the scripts. You'll just have to type everything out from scratch and kind of follow along. But yeah, thanks again to everyone who's purchased this course, especially those people who've rated it 5 stars. That means a lot. And yeah, enjoy this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to come up with a really simple way to change the scale of our object. So I'm going to just go to right click on here, go to UI and select canvas, and then I am going to change the UI scale mode to scale with screen size, and I'm going to put in 1200 800 by 800. It's a little too big there. That just matches what I've got here. And then I'm going to right click here and I'm going to add in a panel, and I'm going to also go to the anchor stuff of this panel, hit Alt while I click on it, select the right hand side, and then do Shift and also hit the right hand side as well. And now I'm going to change the width of this panel to 200. That looks okay for me. I'm going to add a component, and I'm going to call this component I'm going to use the vertical layout group, and I'm going to also have the alignment as middle center. And then on this panel, I'm going to add 2 buttons that are going to be used for increasing the scale of our object. So let's do button 1, and then another one here, panel UI, so UI button. So we've got 2 buttons here, and go back to a panel, and I'm going to hit force the width size so that they fit the full width, and I'm also going to hit the height size so that the full size of the panel, and the panel is obviously set to fit into the canvas. So I'm going to go to this first panel, sorry, this first button, and let's just change this to the text on here to scale up, and let's change the text font to 40, and then again let's do the same thing for here, except let's call this scale down. Help if I spell down correct. There we go. And then let's change this to 40 as well, so we can kind of see those sitting there. If that doesn't sit quite right with me, I'm going to change it to, no, I'm not going to do that actually. I'm just going to hit on best fit, and that should sort out the scaling for me actually. There we go. Alright, so we've got 2 buttons here, and when I press the scale up, I expect the object to scale up and scale down, the object to scale down as well, except we're going to be doing it using the AR Foundation way. So that's not going to be actually directly scaling the object, it's actually going to be scaling the AR session origin, changing the scale of it here, which will then in turn change everything that is a child object of it, including the camera, so things will look further away from they usually would. So let's go ahead and also add in a script that we can use. So let's call this scale controls. And let's double click this and start editing it up. So let's go ahead and create a game object here that we can use to reference our AR session to scale. So we can store that in there, and then we can now have 2 scripts, 2 functions. So void scale up and a public void scale down as well, and each one of these are going to scale up or scale down the AR session to scale. So let's do our scale up first, and what we'll do is we'll do vector 3 original scale. We need that first, is equal to AR session to scale dot transform dot local scale. And then we want to get our vector 3 dot end scale is equal to O scale times a particular number to scale it up or to scale it down. And ordinarily, if you want to scale something up, you'll times it by a bigger value. So this would be 1.1 times bigger than the original size. But with AR Foundation, it's a little bit different because you're changing. It's a bit of a, I guess, a perspective thing where actually you to make something look bigger, you'd shrink it. I think it's due to kind of a distance and stuff. But the point is, if you want to go larger, you need a smaller figure. So it's actually going to be smaller. And AR session, then you want to apply that new scale back to the original one. And that will make it bigger. And then to make it smaller, you want to just make a larger number instead. So now we've got a scale up and a scale down that we can apply to our AR session. We want to go back into our script and we want to take our AR session origin and we want to slide it in there now. So now we've got the AR session origin that will actually change, but we need to also make sure our buttons are connected as well. So this is, I believe this is the scale up one. Is that right? Yeah, scale up. So I might just change the name of this to button scale up so I can kind of see it clearly there, and this can be button scale down. And now inside of this button we want to have the on click so that we'll get this panel script attached to it, which is the scale up controls, and then we want to go to scale up. And then here we want to do the same thing, scale down. Okay, just going to make sure our cameras are reset as well. I believe it should be at 000, so I'm going to do that. Now this is mostly everything kind of done, but we are going to have an issue when we start scaling stuff. It's going to look like, and you can read up more on this AR Foundation scaling guide here, where it talks about scaling and what kind of effects you have. Now, when we do our scaling, we're going to get this kind of effect. It's going to look like the cube is moving. It's going to look like it's getting bigger and smaller, but it's also going to look like it's moving off of the position when we do scaling. We want to fix that, and this is kind of what we're doing when we change the AR Foundation, the scale of it. But to fix that position of it so that it stays in that position, we need a specific line of code, and that is this one here. It's make content appear at. I don't know what I did there, but anyway. So if I just go to Visual Studio again, we go back to place on plane. We want to add in now, when we spawn the object, we want to make sure our session origin script makes the content appear at that location. So it takes the transform the object we want and it makes sure it stays at that position and that rotation when we're kind of changing everything else. So even though we change the AR Foundation stuff, the actual content within it won't go crazy. Now I think I'm also going to add that to here when we remove it around and reset that position. I don't know how essential that is, but I'm going to do that. What I'm also going to do is just add this line of code to the update method of our place on plane script, and that's just so that when we click on these buttons on the right here, it doesn't send a kind of a raycast through the UI and then keep moving our cube around on the ground. It's a small thing. It's not really essential. But I just think it's a bit handy, really. Okay, so this should be enough to do that. Now, there is one thing I'm going to do is I'm trying to recreate. I'll show you what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to recreate this for us. So we should be able to move around our object with our phone, scale up and down, and it will affect that AR session origin. But we'll have something fixed in our scene that will not change in height and width. And to do that, it's been suggested that we can put something in our AR camera, like a stick, for example, which would be the capsule here. So I'm going to also do that as well. I'm going to go back to our camera, and then I am going to right click the camera, create a 3D object, and I'm going to make that a capsule. And then I'm going to change this. I think it's to the... Oh, no, sorry. I shouldn't change that. What I want to actually change is just the rotation, actually. So this can just be, I guess, about that angle there. And then we can kind of bring this down here like that to like 0.01 maybe, and then also change the Z to 0.01 like that. If I zoom in, we can kind of move this now so it's inside the camera, kind of coming out the camera head. And let's also change this camera near view as well, so we can just see closer stuff. There we go. That's better. Actually, this capsule size is really tiny, so let's just bulk this up a bit. Let's bring this back, otherwise it's just going to get too in the way. Okay, I think that's it's okay. All right, I'm happy with that. All right, so I'm going to try and build this to my phone and see what this looks like now. Okay, so we can see that I'm scanning the floor. I can place the object down on the ground and I can scale it up. And that's actually changing the whole AR foundation, the object. And then when I move around the game object, stays where it is. It looks like it's still there, exactly where it should be, even though everything's changing. And this game object that we have on our camera is still retaining its size. So that's correct based off of what we wanted to see from that document.